new here, my name's Victoria. I'm a homeschool mum of 5 from England. Today I want to talk to you about The Boy in the Striped Pyjamas by John Boyne, and how you can use it as an educational resource, both the book and the film, and a kind of a review of how we found using it. But if you're new here, I hardly ever use textbooks for history. I like to teach history in a very unconventional way, and it's my favourite subject to teach. I use read-alouds, documentaries, period dramas, films, conversation. I'm in a couple of history groups on Facebook, and how that works, for instance, somebody put on this history group a couple of pictures of these men in World War One. One had his nose blown off, and one had all that ear blown off. And then the next picture was of them wearing a porcelain mask. Like, one of them had a porcelain nose with a moustache added to it, and it made him look, for want of a better word, normal. And the other one had like a porcelain mask. And I showed it the kids, and we talked about how in a period drama we'd seen this man in World War One had had half his face burnt, and he'd been frightened to go back into society. And also we talked about a girl I went to school with had a chip pan on her head when she was a baby. Went all down her back of her head, all down her back, and the only thing that saved her was the fact that she was wearing a nappy at the time, because they used the good skin from under a nappy to patch her up enough. And she always had to wear a wig, and I was friends with her, and I says, "How'd you keep your wig on?" And what they'd done is they'd drilled 2 little buttons either side of her head, and they were that far from her brain, but they drilled these buttons into her head. And the technology had come from World War One, where they'd had to put little buttons in soldiers to put fake ears on them and stuff, so that they could go back into society a bit more easily. And all that conversation come from this one Facebook history photograph. So I like to teach that. For instance, yesterday when we was watching The Boy in Striped Pyjamas, the film, because it's just for the older 2, who were 11 and 9, not for my younger 3, because of the subject matter. But one of my younger ones, Bard, who's 6, come in, and he was, can't remember, he wanted to do something anyway. And I says, well, in a minute, because when this film's nearly done, and then we'll just go through your sight words quick, and then you can do whatever it was, can't remember what. And he was like, "Why have I got to do my sight words? They've not done no score this morning." I says, "Yeah, they have. This is the score. It's a history lesson." And Bob Pudge and B, my older 2, were like, "This is a history lesson." And I says, "Yeah, you're learning about World War Two, Auschwitz." And they went, "Oh." And Beanie says to Pudge, like half joking, "Mummy's tricked us into doing school again." And I was like, "Do it all the time, kids. Do it all the time. You just don't realise you're learning." But anyway, The Boy in the Striped Pyjamas, when I bought it, people kept saying, "Oh, it's so hard hitting, it's so hard hitting. Read it yourself first, because it's very upsetting." So I was going to read it myself first, but I've got a little baby, I haven't got time. So I thought, well, we'll start it, and if it's too, we'll stop. Because my older 2 know about the Holocaust anyway, because we're gypsies. So I always think it's an incredibly important topic for them to learn, because so many gypsies were killed as well as the Jews. And this is why World War II is important, and this is why us winning is important, because if they'd have won, we wouldn't be here. So they already knew about the Holocaust. Anyway, this is just my opinion. A lot of people find this book valuable. Personally, I think the only merit it's got is if you pair it with the film, if you use it as prep for the film. And I'll tell you why. It's like about a little boy, Bruno, who lives in Berlin. His dad becomes commandant of Auschwitz, so they have to move to Auschwitz. Whereupon he meets another little boy who's the same age as him, but a Jew, called Smule, and they talk to each other through the wire fence. And all the people in Auschwitz are wearing them stripy uniforms that look like striped pyjamas, so The Boy in the Striped Pyjamas. It's told from Bruno's perspective, and I think the writer's just trying to make him look really innocent, because he doesn't know what's going on. But this bothers me for 2 reasons. One, all throughout the book we just found Bruno really irritating because he didn't seem to get anything, and if anything was brought up that you'd question, he went on to something else, like he was completely selfish and unaware and didn't want to, it. And the other reason it bothered me was because the boy knows nothing, so he doesn't tell you anything. Whenever anything does crop up, it just alludes to it. It doesn't actually tell you. So I had to keep stopping reading to explain to the kids what was happening that he didn't realise was happening. So I couldn't have just gave it him and said read it, because they wouldn't know what was going on. Yeah. But I'll tell you why the book, the film doesn't go too. The film doesn't. Sorry, there's something going on downstairs, but the husband's there, and I think it's sorted now. The film doesn't go too far away from the book. Everything that's in the book is in the film, so it stays true to the book. But the film is far superior because it adds more. It is from Bruno's perspective, but it adds things that aren't in the film, like the fact that they're wearing, them in Auschwitz are wearing numbers, and they're burning the bodies and you can smell it, and in the book it doesn't really describe anything either. Like it says, oh, father's magnificent uniform. Doesn't say anything about his uniform, but in the film the kids could see the uniforms and see what everything looked like. Imagery is so powerful. It's like at the end, when I don't want to ruin it for you, there's an upsetting scene at the end, and then with a ghast, and them in Auschwitz, and then they show all the empty uniforms hanging up, and Beanie, my 9-year-old, said, look at all those empty uniforms. I was like, yeah, no. So you can see so much that isn't described or explained in the book, so you just get straight away. I mean, it's alright saying magnificent uniform, you know what it looks like? Nothing. And the other thing about the film is you can see the mother's struggle with it. Like in the book, she's hardly mentioned, and when she is, it's like, oh, mother has a medicinal sherry in the bedrooms more and more. And again, I say to the kids, it means because but in the film, when she realises the smell is them bodies burning, and she talks to her husband about it, you can see how distressed she is. And I think it was Pudge, who's 11, said, that's not very nice for her. And I said, no, because that's her husband, that's the father of the children, and she's just found out what he's up to. And Beanie said, oh, she won't want to kiss him or anything like that now. So you don't really get the mother's perspective. In the book, the father's very much sit down, shut up, so, kids should be seen and not heard, which might have been more accurate, I don't know. But in the book, in the film, the father is played by David Thewlis, who's an excellent actor, and you can see he struggles a tiny bit, only a tiny bit, because he believes in what he's doing. Oh, that's the other thing. In the book, again, vague. It just says that the teacher teaches him about the country's recent history, and his sister becomes a bit obsessed with maps on the wall. But in the film, it shows you that the teacher is teaching them that all Jews are disgusting, and Hitler is like God, and you can see that the oldest daughter is getting brainwashed by it, and all the maps and things in a room and pictures of Hitler and things, she's turning into a fascist because she's being brainwashed, like a lot of children were then, a lot of society was then in Germany. None of that's explained in the book. And again, nothing from the mother in the book, but in the film you can see the mother's a bit like, oh, I don't really know if that's what they should be being taught, and the father's like, that's what all children are being taught in Germany at the moment. So you just get so much more from the film. The other thing in the film, which is not in here, you just think either Bruno's, see, that's the other thing, in the book Bruno's older, so you lie about him not realising anything, but in the film they've made him younger and picked a particularly innocent looking child, so you're a lot more sympathetic to Bruno than you are in the book. In the book you don't really get why he doesn't get anything, why he's not clicking onto anything ever. But in the film you can see how no one will give him a straight answer about anything, and you know, our parents sometimes lie to make things more palatable, and he sees through the crack in the door his father and some other Nazi officers watching a propaganda film that says how marvellous it is in the camp. You know, there's a cafe and they have a selection of cakes and children get to play and all this lot. So when he does go under the fence and go into Auschwitz, he I'll have to be quick. When he does go in under the fence into Auschwitz with Smule, he's like, oh, I don't understand. I saw a film about the camp and it looked lovely. And then there was a bit in the propaganda film where there was this kid playing on these stepping stones, and he sees the stepping stones and no kid's playing. He's like, and you can see the confusion and how he become confused. So yeah, it is a good resource if you're teaching history, World War II, Holocaust. Unless your kids are older and already know all about the Holocaust, so they'll know what it's alluding to. This is no good unless you watch the film as well, and unless you have constant conversation. However, if your kids are older and already know about the Holocaust, they'll find this a waste of time. The only reason to really read it then would be just for the story, not to learn anything. But with the film, it's a good bit of prepping material. But pardon me, excuse me. The film is far superior, especially if you're using it for an educational angle. Anyway, I've got to go. There's all kinds of altercations going on downstairs. The husband's there, but clearly we need a bit of mummy. Don't do that. Right. So yeah, I don't know what we're doing next. We've started a Victorian nursemaid book as a daytime read aloud. And at night we've started Rose Rivers by Jacqueline Wilson, which is another Victorian-esque book. So we'll see. But yeah, that's my Boys Strap Pyjamas review. I hope it was helpful. Ooh, my baby's head. See you next time. Bye bye.